Welcome back to the Gentleman's Gazette. In today's video, we'll discuss the definition of the black tie optional dress code, a couple of related dress codes, and how to make sure that you're always looking stylish when attending these types of events. If you've been a viewer of our channel or a reader of our website for a good deal of time now, you'll know that we here at the Gentleman's Gazette have covered the upper echelons of men's formal wear in great depth. We've got comprehensive PDF guides for white tie, the most formal of all men's dress codes, morning dress, the daytime equivalent to white tie, and black tie, the most formal dress code that many men will wear in their lifetime. We've also done a video and a related article that give a brief summary of pretty much any dress code that a man will encounter. You can check both of those out by clicking the banners at right here. We'll start then with black tie optional. Just like conventional black tie optional events do take place in the evening. Black tie optional events are designed to communicate a judgment-free acknowledgement that not all men necessarily own or can afford a conventional black tie ensemble. In simplest terms, the definition of black tie optional is that the hosts of an event are planning on wearing standard black tie, or the female equivalent, and would hope that their guests try to do so as well, though it isn't necessarily required. So, if a man wishes to dress in a standard black tie outfit for a black tie optional event, he's perfectly welcome to do so. In fact, if a man owns one or perhaps more standard black tie ensembles, he should look at black tie optional events as a good opportunity to wear them and to dress to that high standard. An important note on this topic. If a man does choose to wear a standard tuxedo to a black tie optional event, he should still assemble the tuxedo in accordance with all of the traditional rules of proper black tie. The optional in the black tie optional dress code isn't an excuse to try to dress down parts of a conventional tuxedo or incorporate other less formal elements. So, where the optional part of the black tie optional name does come into play then is for men who don't own traditional black tie ensembles. It's simply suggested that these men dress as formally as they are able. This could mean renting a tuxedo, but in our opinion, most men would be better suited to simply following the guidelines we're about to lay out. As you should be well aware if you're a longtime viewer of this channel, fit is the most important thing when a man is assembling any ensemble. And it stands to reason that 99 times out of 100, something that a man already has in his own closet is going to fit him better than a rented tuxedo ever could. In other words, if a man finds himself attending an increasing number of black tie optional or conventional black tie events, he should look into purchasing a tuxedo of his own rather than having to go through this conundrum of always considering renting or finding something else in his own closet. What should a man who doesn't own a tux wear to a black tie optional event? In the broad strokes, here's the overall dress code. A dark suit, a white shirt, a dark conservative tie, dark over-the-calf socks, black leather shoes, and perhaps a few conservative accessories. With those items listed generally then, let's now go into a bit more depth on breaking them down one by one so that a man will be sure to look good if he's at a party with other, perhaps tuxedo-wearing guests. First, let's talk about suits. Your suit should always be very dark at a black tie optional event to approximate the formality of the black tuxedos you'll be seeing. Wearing a black suit to a black tie optional event is an acceptable choice, just so long as you don't try to make it look like an imitation tuxedo by pairing it with a black bow tie. If you're not wearing a black suit then, charcoal and deep navy are also great choices. Because of its historical associations with country wear, brown suits should typically be avoided, but if you do happen to have a suit that's a very, very dark brown, you could probably get away with it for a black tie optional event. Solid colored suits are your best choice here as well, though a very faint pattern, such as a light and broad window pane, could also be acceptable. You can go with 2 pieces or 3 in your suit, and it can be single or double-breasted, just so long as you are in fact wearing garments that have all been sourced from the same cloth and you're following all of the guidelines we just mentioned. Next, let's talk about shirts. In order to provide a suitable amount of contrast with the dark suit you'll be wearing, your shirt should ideally be white for a black tie optional event. You can get away with light blue in a pinch, but it's best to avoid it. And any other color, even if it's in a very light pastel shade, would be too informal for an event of this nature. Similarly, you should try to avoid patterned shirts as well, and instead, again, go with plain, solid colors. French cuff dress shirts are ideal because they're also a standard feature of actual tuxedo shirts, but if you have a shirt with barrel cuffs, you can wear that too, and it will still be acceptable. On the topic of actual tuxedo shirts, though, don't wear one with a suit. If you try to do this, it's not going to dress up the formality of the suit, it's just going to make you look mismatched. As with your suit, a tie worn to a black tie optional event should be dark, monochromatic, and solid instead of patterned. Small and very subtle patterns can work, but solids are best. A black necktie can be worn here, but as we just mentioned, black bow ties should be avoided with dark suits. So, better choices than a black necktie would be a necktie or a bow tie in something like burgundy, navy, a very dark forest green, or a very dark plum. A smooth silk tie would be most formal, though a tie with a bit of texture can work as well, perhaps something in a shantung silk or a wool grenadine, for example. And for a wide variety of neckties and bow ties in different colors and styles, you can check out our shop here. Regarding shoes, black Oxfords are your best bet here, plain and simple. They should ideally be plain-toed, though a conservative cap toe is also perfectly acceptable. Black derby shoes, if well-shined and conservatively styled, can also work here. However, derby shoes in any other color, such as brown, are too informal for a black tie optional event, as their open lacing system is more apparent and they're going to clash with the black Oxfords and tuxedo shoes that you'll probably be seeing on other men at a black tie optional event. If you do have a pair of Oxfords in a very deep brown or oxblood color and they've been polished to a mirror shine, you could probably get away with wearing them, but black is safest. Regarding your socks, they should ideally match the color of your suit's trousers to be most conservative. You could match your socks to the dark color of your tie if you wanted to be just a bit more creative, but definitely avoid anything in bright and flashy colors or loud patterns. Now's not the time for crazy socks. As with conventional black tie, the area where you have the greatest amount of latitude in a black tie optional dress code is with your accessories. Starting with the cufflinks, for example, they can be silver, gold of any color, or any other solid colored metal, and they can also feature designs and some conservative stones. Stay away from anything with logos or miniatures, however, as these are a little bit too whimsical for the nature of a black tie optional affair. Tie bars, collar clips, and rings can also be worn so long as they are similarly conservative in nature. Also, try to match your medals at an event like this because it's a good idea. Pocket squares are going to look best in white to echo the shirt, perhaps with an edging detail in a similar color to that featured on your tie or your socks. You could wear a dark monochromatic pocket square, but if you do this, you could run the risk of looking like your pocket square and tie came in a matching set, which is never a good look. Linen is your best choice here in terms of fabric, but silk is acceptable as well. Finally, regarding boutonnieres, something understated and in a light color is going to be the ideal choice. Of course, for a wide selection of boutonnieres, pocket squares, jewelry, and other types of accessories, you can check out the Fort Belvedere shop by clicking the link here. Now, on the opposite side of the equation, let's talk about what not to wear to a black tie optional event. As we discussed at the beginning of the video, the optional in the name comes from the basic option a man has in either wearing a conventional black tie ensemble or a conservative suit. There aren't really other options outside of these two basic molds. Given the fact that black tie optional events, as with standard black tie events, take place in the evening, a light-colored suit would look informal and inappropriate. You can get away with something like medium gray in a pinch, but it's best to stick to the dark colors we outlined previously. Next up in the don't wear list are combinations. Just as a tuxedo features a matching jacket and pants, except in the case of warm weather black tie, but that's a different dress code for another video, your suit should also feature a jacket and pants, as well as an optional waistcoat that are all cut from the same cloth. Next up, don't wear neckwear other than dark and conservative bow ties or neckties. Just as you should be staying away from ties that are heavily patterned and brightly colored, an important point here, black tie optional doesn't mean tie optional. Going tieless would simply be too informal a look for a gathering of this nature. A final and major faux pas for a black tie optional event is wearing a different type of formal ensemble, such as white tie or morning dress. Morning dress would simply be inappropriate for an event taking place in the evening, of course, and because one should never exceed the level of dress of a party's host, showing up to a black tie or black tie optional event in white tie would not be something you'd want to do. So, we've established how to dress for a black tie optional event as a guest. For a moment, though, let's turn our attention to the potential hosts of a party that chooses to incorporate black tie on some level. This video wouldn't exist if the black tie optional dress code weren't confusing in nature in the first place. Therefore, we suggest that you as a host use a slightly different but much more clear terminology on potential invitations. This dress code is black tie preferred. This terminology makes it clear to the attendees that black tie will be worn by at least some of the guests at the party and that it's being actively encouraged by the host. Still, it isn't absolutely required, so a man who doesn't own or can't afford a tux doesn't absolutely have to wear one. Also, the black tie preferred dress code means that you're probably not going to experience people who are trying to mix levels of formality when they show up to your party. Finally today, let's talk about a dress code where it actually is acceptable to wear some of the crazier elements we suggested you shy away from earlier. This dress code is known as creative black tie. With creative black tie, you're free to digress from the traditional in one or two elements of your outfit. This is the dress code, in other words, where elements of standard black tie can commingle to some extent with elements of conventional business wear. For example, you could pair a classic tux with a colorful and patterned bow tie, a pastel-colored shirt, or some playful, crazy socks. Maybe a more colorful pocket square or a bold boutonniere would work equally well here too. Don't go overboard and descend into full clown or costume wear here, of course, and remember that a little bit goes a long way. Still, if the hosts have designated the dress code for the party as creative black tie, it is best to loosen up a bit, respect their wishes, and have some fun with what you're wearing. So, there you have it. The black tie optional dress code, complicated no more. Wear a traditional tux if you have one, and otherwise wear a dark suit, white shirt, and some dark and conservative accessories, and you'll still look great. Are there any other pieces of black tie optional advice you think we missed? If so, feel free to share them with us in the comments section below. Also, here's one more reminder to check out our dress code overview video here and our PDF guides on formal wear here. And, as always, don't forget to subscribe to the Gentleman's Gazette YouTube channel so videos like these will come straight to you. In today's video, I chose to wear the non-tuxedo option that would be appropriate at a black tie optional event. I'm sure you'll see me in a tuxedo at some point down the road, but I wanted to provide a clear example of what the alternative dress would be for a black tie optional event. I'm wearing a dark charcoal suit that features 2 buttons and side vents. It's single-breasted, and technically it's part of a 3-piece outfit, but it fits me a little bit better as a 2-piece, and I decided that the more simplistic look of a 2-piece suit would pair well with the 2-piece tuxedos you're commonly going to be seeing. That's discounting the cummerbund, of course, but that's a separate video. The suit features a very faint, almost imperceptible Glen plaid in its patterning, which I believe is really more part of the weave of the suit. But because it looks like a solid from a distance, it would be a good choice for black tie optional. The shirt, of course, is plain white, and it features French cuffs. Inset in those cuffs today are cufflinks from Fort Belvedere. They're platinum-plated sterling silver in an eagle claw design, and they feature carnelian as the stone. The red of the carnelian ties into the other red elements that are accenting my outfit. Speaking of those red elements, the tie is burgundy silk in a jacquard weave, and it features very small white polka dots. While we said that plain ties would be best for black tie optional, and that is of course true, the very small and subtle nature of this pattern means it would still be acceptable for black tie optional. My pocket square is plain white linen with burgundy edging to echo the burgundy in my tie, and my boutonniere is a prototype from Fort Belvedere. My socks today are plain charcoal to match my suit closely, and my shoes are black cap-toe derbies.